This is Dan Abbott. I teach at Southern Maine Community College, and I'm making this video to show you how to create custom template files in SolidWorks for the AEDD 170 and the AEDD 250 classes. I'm going to do parts, assemblies, and drawings. Parts and assembly is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start a new one. Okay, we're going to just start a new part file. You probably won't get that error message. And what I'm going to do begin with is I'm going to go up here to options, and under options, that's customized, I need options, and under options, under system options, I'm going to go down to file locations. Document templates by default are in two different locations. I'm going to add a new location. I'm going to add a new location that's empty because I'm going to put my templates in their own place so I can get to them every time I upgrade SolidWorks and it doesn't delete them. So I'm going to go to the C drive. I'm going to go to a folder called Dan. I'm going to right click, make a new folder. I'm going to call that new folder SW for SolidWorks templates. Now I'm going to set that as one of my locations for template files, and I'm going to move it to the top because that's the one I want to show up first. Yes, I want to change it. Now, depending on how your computer is set up, you might have to get permission, and if you don't have administrative rights, you won't be able to do that. Now I've got this thing set up. What I'm going to do is make a couple of changes. First is I want to make a template file for inch drawings. I'm going to make sure this is set to IPS, which it is. But I also want to make sure that IPS is set up so that the drafting standard used is ANSI, because by default SolidWorks uses ISO. ANSI stands for American National Standards Institute. ISO stands for International Standards Organization. Dassault is a French company. They made SolidWorks in France, and they tend to use a drafting standard that's quite different than ours. In the ISO standard, all the dimensions line up with the dimension line. In the United States, we want all our dimensions to be horizontal. We also use slightly smaller fonts. So that's the style that I want to use. Now, under annotation, under font, Century Gothic is acceptable. That's the default font, so that's what we're going to leave it as. Eighth of an inch, 0.125 is a normal text height. I personally like it a little smaller, but you don't have to change it. If I go down to dimensions, I'm going to do the same thing under dimensions. I like my text heights to be a little bit smaller, 0.1. And if your text is 0.1, then the length of your arrowhead should also be 0.1. 0.13 is the default. I'm going to change that to 0.1 as well. Now all this does is change the way the dimensions look that I'm using in my sketches. It's not going to have anything to do with the drawing files. We'll change those later on. But I do want the ANSI standard when I'm putting dimensions in because they're easier to read. So it's based on inches. I'm done now. There's not too many changes I would recommend. I didn't mean to get new. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and if you've used earlier releases of SolidWorks, this is 2020, the location for the format for template files is moved. If you go to Files of Type, it used to be that all the template file formats were up here with all the other SolidWorks formats, but now they've done it alphabetically. So Part Templates, PRTDOT is the extension. They're down here. So now the minute you do that, it goes to the location that you identified as the place you want to put your template files. Because I made that folder SW templates and then moved it to the top of that list, that's the one that opens up. This is for inch drawings, so I'll just call it part inch, and that'll be the name of that file. And then when I want to start a drawing in inches, that's what I'm going to do. Now, let's start a new one. And I'm just starting a new one using the existing template just so it's nice and clean and I don't have to worry about anything. I'm going to change this to millimeters. Now, I've already done this on my computer, but if you go to millimeters and then pick Edit Document Units, I've already changed the standard for drafting from ISO to ANSI, but you want to do that here as well. So that's, again, the one change I want to make. This is a metric drawing now, or a metric part file. So I'll go to Save As. Again, I'll go down to Save Files as Type, pick Part Templates right here, and this time I'm going to call it Part Metric. Enter. So now I have my two templates that I can use one or the other when I start a new file. So the next time I start a brand new file, if I'm looking in the folder that I created, you notice I've got tabs here, MBD and templates. Those are both file locations that were created by SolidWorks. SW templates is mine, so if I want to start a part file in millimeters, I just take that one. I'm in millimeters. It's less likely if you do that, you'll make a mistake and create a drawing using millimeters when you're in a drawing that uses inches, or vice versa. Kind of important when you do the certification exam. Now I'm going to do an assembly. So I'll go to New this time, go back to the template folder that SolidWorks sends, open up an assembly file, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have one for inches, so I make sure this is inches. I've already changed. Once you've changed the edit documents units, once I've changed that once, it's changed for everything else I do, so I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to set that to inches. I'm going to go up, do a save as, and it goes into the templates folder. I don't want it as an assembly file, though. I want it as an assembly template, which is right there. And we'll call this assembly inches. Now I'm going to go over and make one that's for millimeters, so I'll just change it to millimeters. Up here again, file save as, do the same thing, change to the template format, and that is assembly templates, and this one's going to be assembly metric. So now I've got 4 templates that I've just created. Now those are the simple ones. The drawing one's a little bit more involved. And it's a little more involved because there's really 2 things going on with the drawing. So if I were to start a new file, again using their drawing template, the first thing it's going to ask me for is a format. So here's the thing. A drawing template is going to be something that saves whatever changes you put into the options area, any changes you make through options, just like the ones I just made for part files and assembly files. But templates for drawings can also have a sheet format, and the sheet format means it's got a specific sheet size and it has a title block of some kind that's associated with it as well. So when you first start a drawing, it asks you to pick from one of the default SolidWorks sheet formats. Unfortunately, the sheet formats from SolidWorks are just god-awful. And here's why. That's the A-size sheet format. About a quarter of that sheet is used up in title block, and it's a really badly designed title block, in my opinion. So I don't want you using it at all. Instead, what I want you to do, and I'm just going to cancel out, I'm going to right-click, go to the properties for this, and I'm going to browse to a different sheet format. Now I'm giving you a group of sheet formats that I created with title blocks for our system for SMCC, and they're on the shared Google Drive. You can go there and download them. Just quickly what they would look like. I'm going to bring up, I'm in my email for school right now. Go over here to those little, some people call that the waffle iron, the 3x3 dots. Go to Drive. Now yours won't look like this. I have way more drives than you do. But in the Google Drive, there's a folder called R Drive Student, right there. And I gave you a link that takes you directly to this location where you have folders for each of the courses we teach. If you go to, well, we'll go to the 250. I've got template files for SolidWorks in both places. Oh, let's reorganize that. So 250 is the mechanical design class. If you go in here, there's a folder called templates, and there are 2 types of templates, AutoCAD templates and SolidWorks templates. SolidWorks, I go in here, there's all the SolidWorks templates right there. You can go in here, right click, say you want to come up here, right click, say you want to download, and then you can download those files and then put them in a specific location. You can download them all as a group too. And oh, I see. I have to do that. I have to be right on top of the folder name. So now if I go to download, it's going to create a zip file. that zip file is going to combine all of these files that are in here into one file, and then you can say, let's put it someplace, save it. Depending on your browser, it'll tell you that you can. And I put this already over here. I pulled in something called sheet format, but save it on your hard drive on whatever computer you're using. Then you can unzip it, and that'll give you access to these sheet formats that I'm about to use to create a drawing template in SolidWorks. Go back to this sheet right here. So I'm going to find that by going to Browse. And when I browse, this is where I put the templates that I downloaded. And we'll start with the TA inch. We'll make an A size for inches. Open that up. And it looks like that, which is just cleaner to me. It takes up less room. Using the entire space across the bottom, it just makes the space that's left more regular. Now that format is kind of fixed, but you can always right-click, edit sheet format, and now you can go in and change what it says. For instance, you're either going to use the 2000, oh, you know what? That actually does have to be updated. The current release, the current edition of the ASME Y14 standard, probably people aren't using that one anymore. This one is still used fairly widely, but there is another one. So if we were to copy that and put the two of them right here, the choices now would be 2009 or 2018. That's the most current one, and they dropped the letter M from it, so it would actually look like that. So for any particular drawing, you might want to go in here after you do the drawing and delete one of those so that the only one that's there is the one that you actually are using. So that's one of the things that you can do with the sheet format on any individual drawing that you start from this template. Now I'm editing the sheet format. To go back to the sheet, right click, edit sheet, and now I'm back to the sheet. Now it might not be obvious to you right now what just happened. So let me bring something in that you can actually see that I'm drawing. I don't have anything open, so I'm going to go and do a little browsing. And I'm just trying to open a part file, basically, so I can bring in some drawings. So I'll go to our drive. And on our drive, AED 170 is one of our drives. 250 is another. So if I look under Caster, and I make sure I'm looking for a part file, there is a part file right there. So now I can bring in a top view, for instance. That's all I need. If you've got a drawing sheet that you're setting up and you've already got a view in it, when you right click and go to edit sheet format, you don't see anything that's on the sheet, because what you're doing is looking down under the sheet at the format of the sheet where you can then make changes. When you then right click and go back and say now edit the sheet, you'll go back to where you have actual views, but you can't edit the format while you're there. So it's really like having two different drawing spaces. And I'm going to delete that because we're creating a template now. So that's the difference between a sheet and a sheet format. Now I'm happy with this. I want to use this as my template file. So I go to File, right click. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to make the changes I need to make. There are some things you need to change in SolidWorks from a drawing point of view because they are incorrect. The primary one is line weights. But I'm going to go to Options now. And under Options, I'm going to make sure that under Document Properties, this is Document Properties now, not System Properties. These are only going to affect the particular file that I have open right now. First, make sure it's set to ANSI. After that, you can go in and make any other changes you want to make. So again, you can go down to Annotation. You can go down to Annotation. If you open that up, you notice there's all kinds of things you can change under Annotation. But if you want to do what I did earlier and change the size of the text, you can do that here. If you want to go down to Dimensions, do the same thing. Change the size of the text. Also change the size of the arrowhead to 0.1. I didn't mean to get out of that. Go back in. Go back down to Dimensions. Now, a couple of other things I want to do. Primary precision. Normally I want 3 decimal places if I'm drawing in inches, at least in the United States. And the other thing is trailing zeros. It says leading zeros standard. Well, it's based on whatever standard you have set up, but right now I've got what's called an ANSI modified. To make sure, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to remove all leading zero. Because in the United States, and using inches, if we have a value less than 1, we don't put a leading zero. If we're using metric, anywhere in the world, a value less than 1, you do put a 0. On the other hand, in the United States using inches, you don't have the option of eliminating trailing zeros because zeros in the United States at the end carry what's called tolerance significance. So for dimensions that are trailing, we want to show them for dimensions and for tolerances and for anything else we're going to do. If we were doing a metric drawing, we would want to not show or suppress any trailing zeros. We'll get to that in a little bit. The most important thing that you've got to change is the line weight, and that's under line font on the left-hand side. By default, for some reason, there's a very small difference between visible lines and hidden lines. Hidden lines are set by default to 7/1000ths of an inch. Visible lines are set to just a little under 10/1000ths of an inch. They should be at least twice as big. So twice as big here, 13.8 thou, is going to be the size you're going to want your visible lines to be, even maybe a little bit thicker, but that's probably thick enough. There's also a line style, and I actually make changes here as well. The center line style I find needs to be a little bit different because I don't think that I don't like having a 3-inch segment before it starts to break down. So I would change that to something smaller. In fact, I changed it to 1. And then I don't want the segment to be 1/4 of an inch long. I want them to be more like 1/10 of an inch long. So I want the break to be 1/10 of an inch. I want the segment length to be 1/10 of an inch as well. And on hidden lines, I would do the same thing. Dashed lines are what they call them in SolidWorks. So here, instead of 1/4 inch segments, actually 0.125 is traditionally what those would be, 1/8 of an inch. And then in between, 0.0625 would be 1/16 of an inch. So it just makes my line segments a little shorter, but with a center line, it makes the overall length of the line that you use before you start breaking up into a shorter line as well. Those are the things I would change here. Now that those things are all changed, I go up here to File, Save As, and then once again, I'm going to go down to the types of files, and I want drawing templates now. So this is going to be drawing inches A size. Probably a little clunky, but you get the idea. Yeah, that's good. The reason it's gave me that warning is I had brought in a view at one point and wanted to make sure that templates cannot save specific views for drawing. Now that's just the A size version of this. So now I'm going to leave the same thing I've got right there, but I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to change the properties by going and browsing for a B size inch. Now when I apply the changes to this, now I have a B size sheet of paper, and for some reason it did not come in with the title block. I don't know why that is. Let me look and see. Go back to Properties, Browse, TB inch. That's a fairly small file. It may be that somehow that got named TB inch. Now it does look like shows it over here. That's what it should look like. Apply changes. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to pause and see if I can fix that, because I don't think that's going to happen to you, and I'm not sure what's going on. Well, apparently there was nothing in the file that I had. I'm not sure why, but at any rate, this is what it should look like, and I did find the right one. Now again, I've already made the changes I need to make as far as the font size goes, etc. So I'll go and do a Save As on this one. And this one, when we do the Save As, I'm going to go down to Drawing Templates, and under Drawing Templates, we'll do, this one will be A size, B size inches. So drawing inches B size. That'll be our drawing template there. Do the same thing for millimeters. Make a new one for millimeters, bring in the metric sizes. Now, every time you start a new file, don't forget you need to have a place to put this, and I'm putting all of these right here. So if I want a drawing file here, this is a drawing file in inches, this is a drawing file in A size and B size. Probably, given the way that looks, I really ought to have named those A size and B size to begin with, so that's what I think I'll do. I don't think I can do that right here. I've got to go into the folder itself. But if I want a B size, that was one I just created, come across and do this, and it starts out looking like that. You might not think anything had just changed, but that is a different drawing. Let me just delete this, and delete that, and delete this, so you have no drawings open at all. Alright, so now, when you start something new, you're starting with your own custom template. Do this one, comes in, looks like that. Saves you a lot of time, and it makes sure things are more consistent and applies things more consistently. There is a document in our drive, and that drive looks like this. And the document that I'm talking about has some standards in it, and here it is. It's called SolidWorks ASME PowerPoint. And it's a PowerPoint that goes through and talks about how to use SolidWorks correctly to apply standards, and that includes a series of slides indicating how to put dimensions on things, etc. And it also has some information about creating template files there as well.